Hey guys, welcome back. Okay, so 2 weeks ago-ish, my son celebrated his bar mitzvah. Yes, he's become a man. It's super exciting. And, we have the Shabbat and all of our family coming. We have a party. It's all fun and great, but his birthday isn't actually on Shabbat. So I was sitting with him and I was thinking, we were saying, what do you want to do on your actual birthday? Now, he was born on a really cool day. It's like the eve of Tu B'Shvat. Tu B'Shvat is a day in our calendar where we celebrate the trees. We celebrate the land of Israel. We plant trees. We eat dried fruits. It's like super deep, super connected to this land. And so we were talking about what he wants to do for his actual birthday. And he had this idea of doing something with volunteering, maybe with planting trees. Anyways, I find myself on his birthday with a bunch of 13-year-old boys or 12-year-old boys, their power tools in hand, and we are building a lookout. We're building a beautiful swing on this nice hilltop in Judea and Samaria. It's next to a new hilltop community. And we're planting trees, and it's absolutely spectacular. Now, I will just say this hill has never been settled on. It's, part of state land. So we're helping out people, and it's really, really beautiful and exciting. And something crazy happens, actually. I'm digging with these kids, and I'm like getting all dirty, and, the sun's going down. It's not something great. There's not like cameras everywhere. It's really just a private experience. And my shovel hits something hard, and I think it's a rock. And I kind of get my fingers in there and I pull out pottery. And it's not just one, it's like shards and shards of tons of pottery. And this stuff is like deep in there. It's maybe thousands of years old. And I'm telling the boys, I'm like, guys, you are part of something so monumental. This is definitely an area where our ancestors lived. And it could be that after thousands of years, we're coming back and planting trees and making a lookout for people to come and enjoy the beautiful view of this land. And it's been waiting for us. We're continuing something ancient and great. Yofi, after I had that idea, I'm holding this like pottery in hand, and I have this strange, I don't know, thought that comes up. I'm like holding on one hand this sapling hasn't started its life as a tree yet. And one day will give fruit. And on the other hand, I'm holding this maybe thousands of year old pottery shards, a bunch of them. I can't even hold them all in one hand. And I'm seeing these things and I'm thinking, wow, we're always arguing about this land as if it's just geography. It's like all the politics of the region, right? By the way, this is going to be a little bit of a political episode. And that's okay. It's like the elephant in the room. We're going to talk about it. What if the real tension isn't about the land at all? What if the opposite of peace isn't actually war, but rather ambiguity? Like not knowing who you are, not being willing to say what is yours, living in this permanent state of maybe. Ambiguity, it feels comfortable. It feels safe, right? But maybe, just maybe, it's spiritually corrosive. And not just on a national level, but also on a personal level when we really don't live in our truth. Today's conversation with Nadia Matar is anything but subtle. She does not live in a maybe. She has very clear certainty to what she believes is true and right. She lives in complete clarity. Nadia Matar is one of the loud voices for sovereignty in Judea and Samaria. She's done a lot of interesting things, and I'm so excited for you guys to hear from her. It's maybe a different perspective that you've never heard, or maybe it's one that you're super gung-ho on, and you know what? Maybe you don't agree with anything she thinks. I think it's important to be here. During this conversation, I want you to hold it in your mind. Does ambiguity create peace? Like when I don't have to choose sides and everyone's right and all of it's good? Or does ambiguity actually continue and quietly maybe create instability? I think that the Tanakh has answered this thousands of years ago, perhaps, and that we're going to talk about at the end of this interview. Stay tuned, and I hope you enjoy it. Okay, welcome back. And we have live with us one of the most incredible women of the Judea and Samaria region, Nadia Matar. Nadia, thank you so much for joining us on our podcast.
Thank you very much. And I represent here my co-chair, Judith Katzover, who I feel I'm her student, and she's one of the real pioneers of the renewed settlement of Hebron and the whole story. So I also represent Judith Katz.
Amazing. Maybe we need to talk about her as well. You've spent decades working and insisting that these lands of Yehuda and Shomron, Judea and Samaria, are not necessarily political, but it's actually a homeland. It's part of our home. And so when you walk around this land, this region that you also live in, what is it that you feel that you think that the rest of the world, the rest of Israeli society, that our listeners, what are they missing?
Let me tell you a story, short story, don't worry, about that will express and answer your question. In 2005 was the horrendous disengagement, as they call it, the expulsion from Gush Katif. And of course, I was there with the many tens of thousands of other people. And one of the people I met there is somebody you might know, Naomi Salomon, the wife of famous Yehuda Salomon, who was then a photographer, who became friends and whatever. Then after the expulsion, she went back to the States. And in 2007, she calls me saying, Nadia, I'm in the country, and can you bring me somewhere spiritual where I'm going to recharge my batteries? So I said, okay, I'll pick you up from Yerushalayim and we'll drive somewhere. On the way, we're driving, and I knew where I was going to bring her. She says, where are you bringing me? I says, I'm bringing you somewhere not far from Efrat in the south of, in the eastern Gush Etzion. It's called Ma'er Chavam. And and I start explaining what it is, and she stops me, says, you're bringing me to Ma'er Chavam? I said, yeah, what's the problem? You know my personal story with Ma'er Chavam? I said, no, you wanted the desert, you wanted to recharge your batteries, so I know the place. I can't believe it. She says, you have to stop the car. Let me tell you the story. And she tells me the following story. Here we are in my car in 2007. And she says in 2001, she was in the States. She was a photographer. She was called by her boss there in the States. Naomi, you have to go to Israel and make a movie about the settlers. And she says I was not very connected at the time, not to the Yiddishkeit and not to Israel at the time. And I come to Israel. I ask a friend, listen, I have to make a story about the settlers. Can you bring me somewhere? And he said, what kind of settlement do you want? A city like Maya Domim or agricultural? She said, I don't know, just bring me somewhere and let me finish the story. So he said, you know what, 2001, right? Minister Rechavan Zevi was just murdered, and in his memory and in his honor, a group of people I heard went to a hill somewhere in Tekoa, and not far from Tekoa. Do you want to go and see a new settlement? She says, okay. And she says, they're bringing me when it was a little bit winter, cold. There I was dressed like in New York or I don't know, in the States. And they bring me to this place, a few caravans, a few guys who all went to work. I stayed along with this one guy, and I kept on asking him, why are you here? We're like, what are you doing here? On a hill, there's nothing around you. And at one point, I was annoying him so much, he says, with his broken English, he says to me, you want to know why I'm here? Why we here? He says, yes, come outside with me. So she tells the story in the butts, it was all mud and there's nothing yet, just a few caravans. And he takes a shovel and he starts digging. And she says, oh my God, I'm here alone with this guy and he's digging. What's going to happen to me? Digging. And then he bends down. And I'm telling you, I'm going to cry now. He bends down. He takes this whole thing of earth from the wet, good earth that here in Greece, red, beautiful. He brings it close to my face, she says. And he says, close your eyes, touch this earth, smell it. This is our land.
Wow.
This is our land. And she says to me, and I'm telling you, I have the chills still remembering. She says, Nadia, I just touched the earth. I closed my eyes, I smelled it, and I felt all of Jewish history going through me.
Wow.
That is a story I tell everyone. Because that's when you ask, how do we feel when we walk here in Judea and Samaria? We feel that we walk together with our forefathers. We walk the Bible. We walk on the Psukim. I feel the whole history walking here. This is home. This is not politics. This is the one and only Jewish land. And that's how we feel. I grew up in Belgium. I was born in Belgium. I made Aliyah when I was 18. And I always tell the story that Rabbi Riskin said, I'm not going to make it a long story, that he had this story about this guy who came on Aliyah, thanks to his grandfather. And when he was in Chutz La'aretz, somebody said, he asked somebody, some guy, some non-Jew, like, why are you singing here? He says, because I hear the singing of the land. And this Jew didn't hear in Poland, didn't understand what he was talking about. So this non-Jew tells him, if you as a Jew want to hear the singing of the land, you have to go to your country. When I heard that story, I felt the same. I grew up in Belgium. I don't have any fancy stories about anti-Semitism. I grew up in a nice Jewish ghetto with a Jewish school, and there were synagogues. But I didn't feel connected. But every time my parents brought me to Israel, we only opened the airplane, and you felt there was something. I couldn't express it in words till Rabbi Yiskin told that story. I heard the music. There's music here.
Oh my gosh.
This is where we are, home.
Nadia, I'm like really vibing with your story. I felt the same thing when I moved from Tennessee at 18. I remember getting off the plane, and there was just something there that you really can't describe. I'm sure some of our listeners maybe know what we're talking about, and some of them, have been to Israel and they feel there's something different in the air here. There's something, and it does. It feels,
and even more so in Judea and Samaria.
yes, the heartland. This is the heart.
The heartland.
It's everything pumped.
It's when you go to Hebron, you just feel that your batteries are being recharged. Rebbetzin Levinger of blessed memory always said so. She said, "I'm just from Brooklyn. I'm just from the States, but the strength I have." We asked her, "How do you have such strength?" She said, "It's not me. It's Hebron." And that's how we feel. Judith Katzover and myself, we go at least once a week to Marat HaMachpelah just to get the koch.
Wow. So it's interesting because when we talk about the Torah and the Tanakh, it always talks about these places: Beit El, Hebron, Shiloh, Shechem. All these places really. Do you see the work that you're doing, the activism that you're doing? And I want to actually ask you about this specific work that you do. I want to hear about Women in Green. I want to hear about what you're doing today. I want you to tell our listeners about Judith Katzover. Do you see what you're doing as like a continuation of the biblical story, or are you more like responding to a modern crisis that we're going through right now?
No, the response to the modern crisis is to go into the biblical footsteps. It's definitely the biblical footsteps. And one of the things that we've done, I made Aliyah in 87, met David Matar, who we both, on our first date, we said, what is your dream? Is to be part of the modern days pioneers. It's not enough to make Aliyah. Every morning you have to make Aliyah. When you wake up and say, well, so we understood. He made Aliyah from the States. I made Aliyah from Belgium. We didn't want to just be in a city, which is also fine, but we wanted to also make Aliyah somewhere in Israel. So we went to live in Efrat, which is between Jerusalem and Hebron, which is very amazing. And I was going to be a housewife, which I thought was very important, to be with the children. And then the 1993 Oslo Agreements were signed. I understood that one must do something about it together with my mother-in-law. I always tell the girls I speak to in the groups, be always in a very good contact with your mother-in-law. My mother-in-law, blessed memory, Ruth Matar. Go to jail with them. That's the best you can do.
Oh my
for
God. You went to jail with your mother-in-law? You have to tell me that story. Tell us the story for a minute. You have to.
I didn't rob a bank. We just had some demonstrations against the Oslo Agreements. We were arrested for a few hours, and then you go with your mother-in-law. I mean, it's the best thing. Anyway,
you become besties in jail.
Women. Yeah.
That's great.
It's a badge of honor to go to jail for the land of Israel.
Okay.
That was in the 90s, more than once.
Wow.
To do public service, to be in trialed, etc. Anyway, there was nothing more important and more moral to oppose the immoral Oslo Agreements, if we talk about it a little bit seriously now, when you think about it. A government that brings in a mass murderer, Yasser Arafat, with so much blood on his hands, and tries to pretend that the man has changed, and that in order for peace we must give him weapons, and we must give him land. I mean, obviously, the majority of the Jewish people immediately understood the
repercussions,
the travesty of it. It's like the Chamberlain agreements with Adolf Hitler. So Yasser Arafat was the modern day Adolf Hitler.
Oh yeah.
Anyway,
and the outcome was brutal. Anyone now looking back thinking,
also 2,000 Jews were killed because of the Oslo Agreements, because of the naivete. It's a naivete of Jews who cannot understand that we have an enemy that teaches their children, and it's their religion. It's a holy mission to kill Jews and Christians and anybody who's not a Muslim.
We see it all over the Middle East right now. I mean, Christians are being massacred and tortured all over the Middle East. All over.
Yeah, and the Kurds, and
awful.
it's unbelievable.
Yep.
Anyway, so you wanted to know what I did. So we created this movement with my mother-in-law, Women for Israel's Tomorrow, against going back to the Green Line, saying that all of the land of Israel belongs to us. We had those green hats, so the media called us Women in Green. I never liked the name, but then
It
came
stuck.
the disengagement or the uprooting from Gush Katif. My in-laws unfortunately fell ill, and Hashem made it so that I met this amazing woman called Judith Katzover, and we looked up together, and she joined, and she is from that entire generation of people who after 67 understood that the government didn't know what to do with the victory of the 67 war.
Yeah.
When we returned to Judea, Samaria, Jerusalem, the Golan, Gaza, etc., and they together, under the leadership of Rabbi Levinger Zatzal and his wife, and Rabbi Hanan Porat, a whole group of people call themselves Hamitnachalim
The
in
settlers.
Hebrew, which is the most beautiful word in Hebrew. In English, it's mistranslated.
Well, no, in
as
English,
settlers.
it's become politicized.
Exactly. No, but why do they say settlers? Because they want to give the impression you took land from somebody else. The real translation is
The
inheritors of
inheritors,
the
the
land.
inheritors, nachala.
That's what we are. To make a long story short, Judith Katzover and her husband, they were part of this incredible movement of returning, they specifically to Hebron. One day, I suggest you interview her or about the
We'd
story
love
of
to have
the
her.
13 women who, the 13 women in Hebron in Bet Hadassah.
Yes.
If you have any connections to Hollywood, this is
It's
a
a
movie. Has
movie.
to be
It's
made
a
about
movie.
that.
When you go there, you're just like,
It's a movie.
yes, it is.
So I had the privilege of meeting her, and when we returned from Gush Katif, we were very upset with what had happened, of course, but we saw that we can't stay home and cry because the next battle is Judea and Samaria.
Yeah.
We started fighting on different kind of hills together with our members, of course, with hundreds and hundreds of members and Gush Etzion people, a hill here, a hill there. We redeemed it. But at one point, Judith Katzover said rightfully in 2011, if we're going to continue only focusing on settling, we're going to lose this battle because the Arabs here we spent 6-7 years to save one hill here, another hill there, Shdema there, but meanwhile the Arabs are funded with billions of dollars given to them by anti-Israeli organizations and countries, and they're taking over every minute we speak. They take over another hill. We're not going to win this battle if we don't have another level, an additional level to settling. And she said in 2011, the right-wing camp doesn't have a political plan. We keep on saying no to the left, no to a Palestinian state. Don't give them
You're not
weapons.
giving another option.
Don't shake their hand. What is our
Yes.
yes? You can't go in life also, in your private life. I'm not going to be a dentist. I'm not going to be a lawyer. So what are you? Who are
define
you? Said
ourselves.
Judith
It's the
Katzover in 2011.
proactive.
Who are we?
Yeah.
Yes. No, what is our plan? And that's when she said, we have to do what should have been done when we won the war in 67 and the government of Israel didn't do it, to apply the Israeli sovereignty over Judea, Samaria, and Gaza, by the way. Gaza is an integral part of the land of Israel, and it has to return to make Gaza Jewish. We have to make Gaza Jewish again. And she said, and that's when we started promoting the sovereignty plan. Over the years, we were busy with lectures, with conferences, with newspapers, and again, with all our many members and supporters and donors, without whom we would not do anything. And in 2014, something happened. The kidnapping of the three boys, Gilad, Eyal, and Naftali.
That was
after they
so
were found,
devastating.
so devastating. It was at a time when there was, now we are after October 7th. So
We know that there was higher levels. We unfortunately realized that
Yeah,
what
it
we
was
thought
another
then was
level.
really bad was the
Yeah.
tip of the iceberg.
And that night, when they were found, after 18 days of searches, Judith Katzover calls me and says, you heard the news, they were found. Tomorrow is the funeral. Tonight, we have to give a Zionist response. We have to show the world that if they think that by killing Jews, we're going to leave, we're going to say it's not ours, we're going to deepen our roots into Eretz Israel. And we went to a hill that you know,
Yes.
a forest above the Gush Etzion intersection, which is a 300 dunam, 75 hectares, if I'm not wrong in American terminology. 300 dunam, that I know it is, of a forest that belonged to the Gush Etzion Regional Council, but wasn't developed for some reason, I don't know why, and there's no vacuum. If we don't keep what's ours, somebody else will take
It's so
over.
true.
And the Arabs of Bet Bajal took over that forest for so many years. And to make a long story short, that one night, the night that they were found before the funeral, together with many members and supporters and Gush Etzion people, we went up back to that forest, before us, other people tried to redeem it and didn't succeed. And to make a long story short, today it's a flourishing educational Zionist center that says Am Yisrael Chai. And one of the things, now I'm getting to your question, one of the things we just did recently is on one of the hills in Oslo, there are ruins. And we found out that those
archaeological
are the
ruins.
biblical
Archaeological
ruins. Yeah, archaeological ruins, which we were told are from the biblical Migdal Eder, which is mentioned when it says Vayet Ohalo Migdal Eder. Yaakov, on his way after Rachel's passing, he was walking there, and
he
and
plants
his
Midrash,
tent. That's where it is.
He plants his tent
right
in
there,
Migdal Eder.
Right there. And we can walk there. It's like gives me the chills every time I'm there. I'm physically there, and I'm saying, "Oh my God!" I'm closing my eyes. I'm saying, "This is where it happened."
This is where Jacob's tent was.
It's
where Jacob's tent was.
Can you imagine? I mean, people have to come and just feel it, and then you come there. It's a path that we put above. In Oslo, we also have, unfortunately, we set up something in memory of Ari Fuld, our dear friend who was murdered.
An incredible man.
There's a beautiful lookout. There in his memory, and above that lookout is this hill with the archaeological foundings. So we put a path there, and at the end of the path, you walk there, you feel our forefathers, and then at the end of the path, you have a look on Yerushalayim, and on a clear day, you can see the Temple Mount. So we called it Ein LeZion Sophia.
Our eyes look
at
Zion. Our eyes are looking at Zion. From the Hatikva. Wow. And I have a question. So these archaeological ruins, by the way, I'm a tour guide in this whole region. I knew that area was considered Migdal Eder, but have they tested and seen that this dates back to the time period of our forefathers?
Yeah. Tour guides and archaeologists are all
incredible.
Saying that this is where it was.
Incredible.
You also have ruins there of Beit Rishon, of the first temple. I'm going to bring you.
I'm coming. We're going on a date, Nadia. And I just want to plug right now to all of our listeners, especially if you have kids or if you love nature, it's literally a 30-minute drive south of Jerusalem. If you're on your way to Hebron, if you're on your way and you stop in this place and there's parks and there's outdoor training activities and there's, places to play ball and there's zip lines, indoor gymboree for little kids. There's a place to do bar mitzvahs, weddings. It is an absolutely incredible spot. And every time I go there, there's more stuff. And I actually want to say something. I'm not sure if this is true, and I'm actually going to check this with you. So I want to actually talk about two things. As you were we settle this hill. Now, I know that there are probably people that are listening to this that are going to see these settlers are literally just taking land that's not theirs. I want to differentiate and say this is land that is owned by Jews. The fact that no one's settling there is because we're afraid to, unfortunately, we don't settle everywhere that is ours. And it's what does that mean? People have this impression that people like you are going and actually evicting Arabs from their homes, destroying them and building your home on top of it. And that's really just not what's happening. And I also want to ask another question. This is I'm doubling up here. But critics will say, well, putting sovereignty over all of Judea and Samaria is a dangerous thing. What do you have to say to that?
That I'm saying that the lack of sovereignty is the danger. What is the message that the State of Israel passes on to the world when it doesn't apply its sovereignty over Judea and Samaria? I want to explain to the listeners, first of all, to the viewers, what does it mean, sovereignty? What should have been done? After 67, here, the State of Israel was founded in 1948, i.e. we declared that those areas were under Israeli rule. And then when Israel was 19 years old, the Arabs attacked us, and we luckily, thank God,
miraculously
were able to push them back, and we returned, conquered or liberated. I don't have a problem with the word conquer. When somebody takes what's mine, I'll reconquer it. So we returned. According to international law, there was absolutely no problem to Judea, Samaria, Jerusalem, Golan, Gaza, etc. And we say victory. It was a military victory. But they forgot at the time that every military victory has to be combined with a diplomatic victory. What should have been done at the day of the sixth day of the victory, the military victory, the government of Israel at the time should have said, we were attacked. According to international law, we have the right to return to all those places. And therefore, we declare that today, all the areas that we return to are now going to be an integral part of the state of Israel, no different than Petach Tikva, Rehovot,
Tel Aviv.
Beersheva. We're going to apply Israeli law or Israeli sovereignty over it. But they didn't do that. So they left it in a limbo. What did they do instead? They appointed a group of people in the army that will basically that will administer the area until we decide what to do. It's called the civil administration.
Right.
And that's when all the trouble started, because they basically said, we're not sure
Not sure what we want to do with this.
Yeah, exactly. That's when the heroes sprung up, Rabbi Levinger, this whole generation of people, the Katzovers, the Levingers, the Etznis, and they promoted and pushed this settlers movement, the Mitnachalim, and thanks to them, many
Inheritors
communities were
movement.
built.
Inheritors movement.
The inheritance movement, absolutely. And thanks to them today, we have hundreds of Jewish communities. They convinced the governments to create Jewish communities, but yet, why is there still a question mark? The Israeli application of sovereignty hasn't been done yet. What does it mean to apply sovereignty? It's a vote in the Knesset. You just need to convince the government to pass the law, and that's what we said in 2011. When Israel doesn't apply its sovereignty, it does two terrible things. Three. One, it basically says, I'm not sure yet it's mine forever. Yes, we have there close to 1 million Jews living there, but it's still on the negotiating table. Mm-hmm. Number two, you give credibility to a lie that it really belongs to somebody else. How did the Palestinian people invented themselves? There's no such thing like a Palestinian people. But because we didn't apply sovereignty, then when you don't say it's yours, somebody else will say it's his. And the invention of a Palestinian people happened at that time when we were stuttering. Israel was stuttering and not saying a clear message. And then they sprung up and says it's really ours. So that's the second terrible thing when you don't apply sovereignty. And the third thing, and the last thing, which is also terrible, is that when you don't apply sovereignty and you leave it in a limbo, you leave it open for people to come up to try to solve a problem. That's how the Oslo Agreements came about. 1993, some Israeli, very naive leader said, well, there's a problem here. There's no sovereignty. There's two people here. Maybe we should come up with these Oslo Agreements, divide it, make a Palestinian state. All this is because we didn't apply sovereignty.
I think it also does an injustice. I'll tell you the truth is, of course, there are many Palestinians who definitely want to see all of us murdered. But they're also the ones that are suffering under the Palestinian Authority, and they're also in the limbo. Like, I would imagine that the situation, even for, like, when I read through Tanakh, I do see the stories of, like, some of, like, David's brave men who weren't Jewish, who were Gerim Toshavim, who were foreigners, who were not Jewish, who lived in the land from different peoples, and they were part of the fight, part of the government, part of supporting the people of Israel. And I think, like, would it have been different if we would have said, yes, this is sovereign Israel. You want to be an active, pleasant neighbor that wants to stay and have Israeli citizenship? Go for it. If you're trying to murder us, you have to leave or die.
I completely agree. I don't know about citizenship. I agree about residency. And October 7th was a big
eye-opener.
And when we found out that not only all the Gazans were part of the murder or at least supported or took part of it, but in Judea and Samaria, there was a poll that 84% of the Arabs in Judea and Samaria were in favor of it. So 84% of the Arabs of Judea and Samaria will not be able to continue to be my neighbors. But the 16% that you speak about of Arabs who want
to be in Israel,
who want to be with us, we have to liberate them from the Palestinian Authority. We have to liberate them from the terrorists. And if they are willing to be ger toshav, as you called it, and respect Israeli sovereignty, vakasha. We will have to each case and each family will be checked. But first, let's make sure that 84% of the Arabs in Judea and Samaria who are in favor of a murder, when we see 10 Arabs in the street, we know that 8 of them are willing to behead Jews, put Jewish babies in ovens. I apologize for putting this in words, but people already forgot what happened. But 2 of them are good guys. So first, let's make sure the 8 guys are gone and they go to another country. There's 22 Arab countries. There's 59 Muslim countries. There's no problem in relocation. It happened all over history. It's not, it's a normal thing that people do not want murderers in their backyard. And the nice people, the 16, 14% of Arabs who are willing to live under Israeli sovereignty, ahlan v'sahlan.
Yep. It was very eye-opening, actually, when I remember when we were being attacked for the first time by rockets from Iran, and I could literally hear out my window from Bethlehem cheering, just cheering. And I'm thinking, really? They're shooting rockets at you guys too. Like, it was wild. Like, I'm thinking, like, I'm trying to put my kids in a safe room, trying to get everyone. And I remember looking at the sky. My window was open. I could just hear this, like, it was shocking, actually.
It's very hard for us to understand the mentality of people who don't care who very often those people who promote some so-called peace agreements, they think that if we give them a good life, good economy, that they will be able to want to live with us in peace. But they're not. They have ideology, and their ideology says, make Israel weak so that we can destroy Israel, but then that's only step one. The next step, I have a flag. I forgot to show it to you. I'll bring it to you when you come and visit us. It's a Palestinian flag that was in Bethlehem, flown over the head of Desmond Tutu at the time, with Arabic on it. And he obviously didn't know to read Arabic. He was a Christian, right? And they pretended that they were nice to the Christians at the beginning of the Oslo agreements. Now there are no Christians in Bethlehem.
No, there are Christians, but a lot less.
Very few.
And they suffer a lot. I have Christian friends in Bethlehem.
They're very few. Most of them left, or most of them were made to leave. And on that flag, there's in Arabic, Yom, I learned it by heart. Yom es-Sabat iktal el-Yehud, Yom e-Wahad iktal el-Nazari. On Saturdays, we will murder the Jews, and on Sundays, we will murder the Christians. That's the plan. First, let's destroy Israel, and then we'll destroy Europe and turn it into Eurabia. I spoke to a Belgian anti-Israeli journalist, okay? And I'm Belgian, right? So she interviewed me.
Must have been fun.
I said, you know what? You have to be on my side, not for my sake. We have God on our side. You, in Belgium, you need to be on our side against the Palestinian state because you're in trouble. Do you know what they talk about in Brussels and Antwerp in the mosques in Arabic? Do you think they talk about buying Belgian chocolates or buying French fries? They talk about doing October 7th to you guys there in France, in Paris, in London. So you should be against the Palestinian state for your sake because they're going to turn Europe into Eurabia.
Yeah, it's crazy. Do you see a continuation? Like when I think of, I'm teaching right now this year, I teach the book of Joshua. And do you think, there's this inheriting land? That really is different because that's the first time the people as a nation are coming into the land of Israel. And they inherit the land. And they have a lot of fights, a lot of battles with the Canaanites. Do you feel like we're somehow connected to that story today?
Yeah, I think the connection is that things have to go on gradually. There's no Harry Potter magic wand where we can do everything at once. Joshua, as you call him, taught us that the conquest has to be step by step, and that's what we have to do. But we have to be forceful. We have to do it with belief in the justice of our cause, and that's what he teaches us.
Yeah. So Nadia, you have been called extreme, probably by many people, for views that honestly, if we would come to Israel 2,000 years ago and speak these views, people would have been like, "Yeah, that's legit what it is." So my question is, what has changed?
I think that you could say that up until October 7th, maybe some people call me extreme in the sense that I have very extreme love for the land of Israel. And my extreme love for the land of Israel expresses itself that I like to say things black and white. The entire land of Israel belongs to us. God gave it to us. We don't have the right to give it away. There's not that's what they call extreme. That's all I represent together with all my friends. I think that after October 7th, I'm no more the extreme. I think that the overwhelming majority of the Jewish people woke up and whatever they called extreme maybe before has become mainstream. Not extreme, mainstream. And I think that I represent now the mainstream. And the extremists are those who think that we can have peace or that we can have talks with Iran or with the Gazans or with Giuliani and all those people, those are enemies, and we have to deal with them. Like in the Bible, we were told
Giuliani.
how to
I was like,
deal.
Giuliani's he's in New York.
No, excuse me,
Giuliani.
Giuliani.
I was like,
I'm not
Giuliani.
good. I'm not good at my.
It's
Yeah,
okay.
that's what I
I'm
meant.
clarifying for our
And
viewers.
what needs to be done is, they say there is terror because they have despair. It's exactly the opposite. As long as there's no Israeli sovereignty, they have hope to have a Palestinian state. In order to crush their hope, which is what is going to stop terror, we have to apply sovereignty and make them understand they will never have a Palestinian state within the land of Israel. They want a Palestinian state in France. Bevakasha, I have no problem with that. But here, from the river to the sea, Israeli sovereignty. That will crush their hope for a Palestinian state, that will crush their hope to destroy us. And that is when we will be able to thrive.
Do you see sovereignty as an end goal or the beginning of a more challenging chapter? What's supposed to happen after that?
The purpose is just the beginning. The purpose of Am Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael is to be a goy kadosh, or lagoim. It's to be a light to the nations, and
A holy nation. Yeah.
only when we are fully rooted and in control of our land are we able to bring basically moral guidance and the Torah values to the world. So it's like the famous story of escapes me 1 second, I forgot. I'm bad with names sometimes, but anyway, where it says the famous example of a tree, a grape, how do you call it? A vine cannot grow in earth that's not good for it.
Yeah.
It needs to have a special earth.
Yeah.
Am Yisrael, the people of Israel, can only blossom and flourish in Eretz Yisrael.
Yeah.
Whenever we're not in Eretz Yisrael, we can't blossom, and that's why we need to be in Eretz Yisrael and have sovereignty. And then we will be able to be a light unto the nations.
Yes. It's like the land of Israel is the physical embodiment of the soul of the people of Israel.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The land of Israel is alive,
How do you feel that?
People
Explain that to us a little bit. Like, try and explain that to our listeners.
Now I feel
Yeah.
it. I feel that when we walk the land, when we build it, when we plant, the land is alive and thrives. But when we're not there, I feel it cries. When I pass areas where I still see that are under Palestinian, as they call
Occupation.
themselves, control, I feel as if the land is crying and saying, Eden, save me. Come back. Come home. You have to be here. Redeem me. The land is alive. Not to talk, of course, about the fact that the land only flourishes when Jews are there. Look what happened in Gush Katif. Gush Katif was the most amazing area to have vegetables, etc. We only left, and they can't grow one tomato there. So the land of Israel and the people of Israel, it's like a concert.
Yeah.
We're together.
Yeah.
And that's why I call it's alive. It calls upon us to come.
Wow. If you, Nadia, I have to get biblical. I always ask a question about some biblical figure, so I have to ask you as well. If you could pick a biblical figure that you think most represents your worldview, who would it be?
Okay. Who? I would choose Caleb ben Yefune.
Caleb.
One of the 10 spies.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Because, first of all, he was not afraid to be a minority voice, which I felt I was for many years when we opposed the Oslo agreements. And people were saying, what are you talking about? There's going to be peace. And we learned from Caleb ben Yefune that not to be afraid to be a minority voice. And he did not listen to all the others who were so-called big leaders. And he was not afraid to say the truth. And most importantly, he went to Hebron and he got the koach from Hebron. And he said, Alo na'aleh v'yarashnu ota. When you say v'yarashnu, the word is inherit and possess. Yarashnu is sovereignty. So I connect to Caleb ben Yefune, and when Yudit and I, whenever we have a project, we always go to Hebron. We always say that we coming to get of course, the blessing from Hashem, but also the koach from Caleb ben Yefune and Yehoshua ben Nun.
Okay. I want to do a little bit of rapid fire because I'm so fascinated with all of your, yes, that means you have to answer all these questions really fast. We're gonna get a bunch in there. But it's been such a pleasure so far, and I would love to keep asking you a million questions because I'm thoroughly enjoying this conversation. But I'm gonna also invite people to come hang out with you in real life. Okay, you ready? One place in Judea or Samaria that you think every person should stand in at least once?
Hebron, Marat HaMachpelah, and the Bet Hadassah in Hebron.
Yofi. A biblical figure that understood the land emotionally and not just strategically.
Melech David.
David HaMelech.
David HaMelech.
Avram or Yeshua, who better represents our
Yeshua.
who better represents our moments today?
Yeshua.
One word critics use about Judea and Samaria that you think is completely wrong.
Settler should be inheritor.
One verse from the Tanakh that you feel speaks directly to the sovereignty debate of today.
במדבר ל"ג, והרשתם את הארץ וירשתם, כי לכם נתתי את הארץ הזאת. You shall possess, inherit, and settle, dwell the land, because settlement is not enough. We also have to have sovereignty. Possess is sovereignty. Settling is settling. Both have to be done.
Wow. Shiloh or Hebron? Why?
Hebron,
Aye.
because it's all started there.
Wow. Okay, one modern Israeli fear you think Tanakh would challenge most strongly.
That giving up land equals peace.
If sovereignty were declared tomorrow, what's the first responsibility Israelis would have to take seriously?
To bring 2 million Jews from Chutz La'aretz to come on Aliyah, and to relocate the Arabs to the 22 Arab countries and 59 Muslim countries.
I have to bring everyone. Aliyah, yeah, I have to bring all the people back home. Okay,
At least 2 million Jews.
at least 2 million. One moment in your activism when you felt the land itself was answering back.
2 weeks ago, when Shdema, the hill that we fought for so many years, was officially declared a Jewish yishuv, we were very moved, Judith Katzova and myself.
Jewish town. Wow. Amazing. A question about Judea and Samaria that you wish Israelis would stop avoiding.
Would stop avoiding or would stop doing?
Stop avoiding.
Why do we allow fear to dictate policy over truth? Eretz Israel is ours, and we have to say it loud and clear.
Nadia, it has been so fascinating, so wonderful. Thank you so much for your voice, for your strength, for your personality, and for your stories. I'm going to just call to everyone who is listening to come see how this land is flourishing, thanks to really strong women.
We live in biblical times, mamash, and
Yes.
in a prophetic time of Geula. And we have a generation of Israelis showing courage and bravery like never before, rising like lions and lionesses. And the challenge is, of course, for our leaders to match the people's bravery
Yes.
and lead in truth and fulfill the mitzvah of V'orashtem v'yishavtem Am Yisrael Chai.
Amen. Okay, so let's get back to our question for a minute. What if the opposite of peace isn't war, but rather it's ambiguity? Because when you open up the Tanakh and you dive deep into this wonderful book, what you'll notice is that the Tanakh is not afraid of struggle, not afraid of conflict. What it is deeply afraid of, and it teaches us, is that confusion, lack of clarity, lack of definition. In fact, the first national crisis is not really a war. If we once we're in the desert, we're out of Egypt, it's actually ambiguity, right? Take us to the book of Numbers, Bamidbar, chapter 13, Yud Gimel. We have a story of the spies. The spies are sent off into the land of Israel. And what happens? If you just listen to their words, they talk about the beauty of the land. ויספרו ואמרו, באנו אל הארץ אשר שלחתנו, וגם זבת חלב ודבש הוא, וזה פריה. We came to this land that you sent us to, and it is indeed flowing with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. But the people who live in this land are fierce, and the cities are fortified and very large. We even saw the descendants of the Anak, the giants there. They don't say there's no land. They don't deny it. They don't deny the beauty of the land. They don't deny the fruitfulness and the beautiful fruits of the land. But they say we can't. They say it's complex. They say maybe this isn't for us. They start getting confused. The clarity, the truth aspect is a little bit stuttering when they start seeing the complexity, the challenge. And that is a problem. And then what happens? What I would say, I define this ambiguity. It's on one hand really, really beautiful and really great, and also we don't know if we can do it. And then what happens to the nation? The panic spreads like wildfire. People are like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? We're going to go to this land. We're going to die. And then suddenly the foundations of that clarity of God says, this is your land. You're going in. You got this. I am going to give it to you. That kind of dissipates. When the identity becomes unclear, fear fills that vacuum. The Torah does not portray the spies as evil villains or even low people. These are leaders of the nation. And they allowed uncertainty to seep in, and that leads to spiritual catastrophe. Because a nation can survive enemies, a nation can survive wars, but if it can't define itself and its values and its clarity, that indecision itself is something that can make everything fall apart. Nadia, in our discussion, chose to talk about Kalev, one of the spies, and Kalev ben Yefuneh. And that's her biblical parallel, as she said. And that matters. And what does Kalev actually do? So if we read right after that, Kalev jumps in and he says, Alona alev erashnota ki nochala. We will go up and inherit it because we can. One sentence. He doesn't give military strategy. He doesn't, it did not begin with me. That's inheritance. We will inherit it. It didn't begin with me. It doesn't end with me. And I don't get to treat this idea of God saying this is yours casually. Inheritance is a responsibility across time. Kalev does not erase the complexity. He does not erase the fact that there's going to be war. It's going to be complex and challenging. He erases ambiguity. This is what's right, and this we can do and we will do. Clarity has gravity. It anchors people. It keeps us in the know, like where we're going and what we want and what's true. Ambiguity, it kind of like floats us around and we're not sure here or there. And that floating can cause panic. It can cause lack of direction. It's interesting because when we then go into, 40 years later, Yoshua actually comes into the land. The conquest is a gradual one. It's not something that happens overnight. It's something that takes years and years. And it's gradual, but it's never undefined. It's never like, Yoshua doesn't be like, hey, let's just see how this goes. Or maybe we'll revisit this part later. Maybe we'll retreat. Maybe let's keep all of our options open. Maybe we'll go back to Egypt. There's never this question of what's the right thing to do. Every step is directional. And here's the Tanakh insight. Peace in Tanakh is not absence of struggle. It is alignment with purpose. In fact, the Hebrew word for peace is shalom, which comes from the word shalem, which means whole. We have to be truthful in defining who we are, who I am. It's interesting. I once, I didn't have an argument, but I was taking, it's a broad range of people on a tour once. And, we were talking about, well, listen, if this is the stop to peace, the fact that there are Jews here in this land, in this region, and the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, and that is stopping the peace, then why not live somewhere else? And the discussion came up, well, what kind of a peace is it if it erases the identity of one people who are here? True peace is not everyone saying, oh, we'll just not define ourselves and squish ourselves together. True peace is saying, this is who I am. This is where I belong. This is who you are, where you belong. And now we have to figure out how to make that come together. It's not being, apologetic and saying, oh, maybe it's not that. It's not what it is. Wholeness doesn't mean being quiet. It means internal coherence and strength. In fact, ambiguity and this flip-floppiness that actually gets rid of this coherence, this internal place of truth. And fractured nations, you can't build peace with that. It's an unstable reality. In fact, I want to go to what I think is one of the most dangerous passages in the entirety of Tanakh. And it actually exists all throughout the book of Judges, Shoftim, and that is Ish hayashar be'enav yaseh. Every man does what he thinks is true in his heart. It's this notion of like multiple truths. Like, well, I think this is right for me and that's right for you. And there's not one right direction. This passage is not describing like anarchy in the streets and things are crazy. Although when you do read through Sefer Shoftim, it's pretty crazy. But it's describing this lack or moral ambiguity or lack of clarity at the top levels, right? There's no clarity. There's no shared direction. There's no shared authority or identity. And then what follows? Violence, civil breakdown, tribal fragmentation. We talked about this in a different episode. Everything kind of goes crazy because there isn't this clarity. We're undefined. We're not sure of ourselves. The whole book of Shoftim teaches something very deep and almost like chilling. When a nation refuses clarity, when it refuses to say this is right and this is who we are, then chaos comes in and takes its place. And that, I think, is kind of underlying, I guess, Nadia's perspective. If I were to find her perspective in the Tanakh, that's what I think it would be. And if I go even farther back to the beginning of the beginning, Avraham, we talked about him in the first episode. God says to him, Lech lecha, go. Where? To the land that I will show you. At first glance, it actually sounds really ambiguous. It could be to anywhere, but it's not. Because Avraham moves with total identity clarity. He may not know the exact coordinates of GPS of where he's supposed to be going, but, and by the way, maybe that's not, ambiguity. Avram has none. It is very, very clear what he's following, who he's following, and that is the word of God. And that's why he can actually wander without losing himself, because it's never a question of who he is or what he's here doing. And maybe that's why his descendants eventually do inherit the land. It's not just physically, but it's a covenant, something deep and something true. And now let's get to the psychology. Why is it that ambiguity actually feels like peace? It feels like the right answer. And there's a psychological layer here, right? It feels gentle. If you don't declare something, then I don't have to build it. If I don't own something, it's not mine, then I don't have to take, any responsibility for it. I don't have to fully answer for it. It's half mine, half not mine. And Nadia really talks about this in 1967 when the state of Israel comes in and returns to these heartlands of our nation. They kind of stay in the place of ambiguity. We want to live there. It's our land. But also, let's just not define it. Let's not declare it. Let's not create sovereignty. Let's keep it this question. And this decision to not decide what we're doing with this whole chunk of biblical heartland, it reduces the friction in the meantime for a moment. It feels like short term, this is great, we can figure it out later. But Tanakh actually shows that increases instability. And in the long term, it's really detrimental. And the Torah doesn't promise, by the way, that clarity eliminates conflict or struggle or wars. It doesn't, but it does eliminate like spiritual confusion. And that confusion is spiritually lethal. That confusion of, I'm not sure this is right or not. And I think that really is something that has caused so much struggle in this heartland for Jews, Christians, Arabs, Palestinians, if you want to, because if Israel doesn't say this is mine, then okay, if it's not yours, then it's not yours. But if it is yours, it is. You can't play the game of both sides. And that's really what Nadia's perspective is we need to be sovereign. If you want to live here and be part of this sovereign state, you're welcome to. Anyone's welcome to. But you also have to go by the rules of sovereignty. It's very similar to Yishai's perspective. And it's interesting because if I take it a little bit further, once we do have this clarity, right? When Bnei Israel, the people of Israel, finally settle the land, and we have the land under David and Solomon, these magnificent, glorious kings, something extraordinary happens. There's clarity, there's military stability, there's cultural flourishing, there's wisdom, there's songs, there's love, there's connection, there's a law, there's a temple. Why? Because sovereignty in Tanakh is not domination. It is a deep alignment between people, land, and a mission, and God, Spirit. Without that alignment, you get turbulence, you get friction, you get everything except for shalom, which is peace. But here's the final uncomfortable truth. Clarity is dangerous. Why? Because once you have defined yourself and your mission, then you are accountable to live up to that definition. You're accountable to live that way. Integrity demands it, right? If I say this is my home, then I have to act like a homeowner. Homeowners build, homeowners repair. They uphold standards of living, they protect. Ambiguity is easier. It feels easier. But Tanakh never chooses easy. It's not a book about all the easiest stories. It's about the outlier stories. It's about the great, powerful stories. So if I go back to that story 2 weeks ago when I'm standing on this hilltop with a sapling in one hand and a bunch of pottery in the other, to tell you the truth, I was not thinking at all about politics. I was thinking about continuity. I was thinking about the weight of saying, this is not random. This isn't temporary. This isn't undefined. This isn't maybe this, maybe that. Whether you fully agree with Nadia's politics, she represents something that the Tanakh fully recognizes. You can't live in a maybe. And I can also invite each and every one of you to think personally, because I think this story is so relevant to our own lives. How many times do we try and just take the easier way out? I don't want to have to make a decision. I don't want to have to choose. Can't I choose all the sides? Can't I have my cake and eat it too? And the answer is no. We have to be aligned with what is actually right and true. We have to make decisions, and sometimes making the right decision, the true decision for me, means I must sacrifice something else. And I think that that is exactly it. And so I bless all of us. May we be people who are aligned, who run away from ambiguity, even if it means that sometimes there's conflict. And in the end, be people who bring shalom. Thanks again for joining, guys. I'll see you next week. If this episode helped you better appreciate Judea and Samaria, you can take it to the next level with the Judea and Samaria experience. They can help you plan meaningful visits to this region, off the beaten sites, tour guides, connect you to local personalities. And guess what? This referral service is completely free, thanks to our generous sponsors, Texans for a Safe Israel. Check them out at their website, judeasamariaexperience.com. That's Judea without an H, SamariaExperience.com. You won't regret it.